Is fear impeding your growth? What is fear? What are you so afraid of? Is it criticism? How about rejection? The unknown? Failure? Success? Welcome back to my channel. I am Lady Eloise and this is Elevated Lifestyles. Today we continue our series with Seshan, but we focus on fear. What is fear? How do we manage it so that we can live our best lives? All right, Seshan, I think that we can both agree that this is a dismal time in history. People are overwhelmed and they're looking for hope and motivation, a silver lining and some healing, especially when we take into consideration COVID-19, social and racial injustice, presidential election.
Yeah.
Being a black man in America, when we look at all that's happening right now, that is why we're here tonight. I just remember bumping across your page, and I'm glad that we met before now, because this is the perfect time to have this conversation. I bumped across your page, and one of the plaques on your page, one of your posts, it said, "Is your fear holding back your growth?" But before we jump into that, before you answer that, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Love it.
All right.
Thanks for asking.
No problem. So your definition of fear will look different to mine, different to that of a child or a senior citizen or whatever the case is. How do you define fear?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And this is something I'm actually learning to actually fall in love with fear. For me, fear is something we make up in our mind. It's a story that doesn't exist. It's an illusion. And because of our past conditioning and past the way we've been brought up with our parents, the environment, we've learned to believe that fear is actually real. One thing you have to understand is fear is only legit if you're faced in front of a bear, tiger, or someone's trying to chase you to kill you. That's the only fear that you have to react. Other than that, there's no such thing as fear. That's the way I look at it.
Did you say, did I misunderstand you, or did you actually say that you look forward to fear? Like you've learned to embrace it?
Yeah, so I've learned to really embrace fear. What's the opposite of fear? It's really love, right? So if you learn to love, the fear doesn't exist. It's the same thing as gratitude. When you are grateful, fear actually doesn't exist. And it's something that it doesn't happen overnight, but it's something that can work. But you have to be aware that fear is not real. It's an illusion that we've made up in our mind. It's a story that we tell ourselves over and over, and we tend to do behaviors according to that. So,
you've been a brand and business strategist for over 7 years now. What are the top fears that are stopping people from living their best lives? Your opinion?
Fear of failure and fear of criticism. I think it's the two biggest things that's holding people from stepping into their own power. And it's crazy because it's forcing us to look into the reality now. I think there's a lot of people that are stepping into the power. They're recognizing that there's no such thing as fear of failure. There's no such thing as fear of criticism, so yeah.
Hey, and that's why we're here talking, because I got over my fear of criticism, and I also got over my fear of failure and the unknown, right?
Yeah.
And I just that because just a few days ago we did launch this elevated platform, and I'm just so happy that you are able to talk to me tonight about fear.
Yeah.
So how does fear limit a person's success?
That's such a good question. Again, it's going back to the story. You create this story, and I'll give you an example. I think when we create a story within ourselves, our behaviors tend to respond accordingly. So I think a good example would be for fear of failure is starting your own business. So I've started 3 businesses. So I think a lot of the times when you put a identification to what failure is, that's when fear comes up, right? Fear of failure. So when you identify yourself that you're a failure because your business didn't meet your expectations, it's not necessarily a failure because you didn't necessarily give up. You just learned to even do things better, right? So learning to do that. So launching my third business, I really struggled with the fear of failure because I was like, oh, I wasn't sure if this is going to work again. I've done this before. I've done all the work, so I got into my own head. But I realized the only reason that I'm getting into my head is because of the expectations I've set myself, and I've really identified myself with the fear of failure. So once you realize that, you just realize it's a story. So now we just change that story, what you tell yourself.
And here we are today. I was about to ask you, tell me about a time when you were fearful, but you persist regardless. That's a beautiful story. So can you go in depth on how one can manage fear, how one can up to live fully instead of fearfully?
So the biggest thing you have to do is embrace it. You can't fight it. When you feel the fear, you got to let it you just have to learn to embrace it. The best example I can say is it's like the ocean waves. Your emotions are the waves that go through the body, right? It means that it comes and goes. It just comes and goes. So you just have to expect that it's not permanent. It's just temporary. And if you react to it, that's when we make the bad choices. We say the wrong things. We do the wrong things. And if you just embrace it, anytime you feel the fear of criticism or the fear of the unknown or the failure, just take a step back. Just take some deep breaths, just ground yourself, and just go back into it.
Are there any other strategies that one can implement to push past their fear?
Yeah, I think the biggest question you can ask yourself is what's emerging out of me right now? I think just asking that question will allow you to really regain control again. Because when we are fearful, your brain is designed for survival.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if a lion is chasing or you're scared of talking in front of the public, your brain doesn't know the difference, right? So you're going to act the same way as if you're getting chased by a lion, right? But if you ask yourself what's really emerging out of me, not when a lion is chasing, this is when you're speaking in public, right? When a lion is chasing, you got to run. Just like do whatever it takes, right?
Yeah, whatever it takes to survive, right?
Whatever it takes. That's when you got to like just go into the flight mode and just act, right? But when you're like getting all those illusions of fear, you just learn to ask those questions and get good at asking the questions. Who is really afraid? What am I afraid of? Just learn to have the courage to face it.
Thank you, Seshan. Do you have any final words, any words of advice for our viewers?
I think the biggest advice I can do is just love yourself. I think it's something that's so underrated right now. We are so hard on ourselves. We do things in a certain way and we like get disappointed. We are, you didn't do this right. Just be nice to yourself. Ask yourself, like, what are you proud of every single day? Because guess what? You breathing, you making an impact is something you have to be very proud of, right? So it's, I think, going back to like self-love. It's such woo-hoo stuff, but this is what actually a lot of high performers thrive on is self-love. When you have that kind of love, there's no fear of existence. So just ask yourself, what do you love about yourself right now?
What do you love about yourself right now, Seshan?
Just my courage. I think just stepping into the present moment and just being me, So I think that's what I really love about myself.
And that is commendable. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
What's stopping you from living your best life? Remember, fear is just an illusion. Now tell me in the comments, how are you going to overcome fear so that you can live your absolute best life? If you haven't already, subscribe, like, share, and tell your aunties. I am Lady Eloise. This is Elevated Lifestyles, inspiring you to live empowered.